Welcome. This is Yifa from ParishSOFT. I know some people have joined us. We're still a few minutes out before we're actually going to get started. So if you are ready to go, that's great. You should be able to see my screen right now. If you have any questions that you know that you're going to want to ask throughout today, feel free to bring up the chat question window right now and chat them out. And that way I can get some ideas before we get started. For those of us who are just joining, we are still a few minutes out before we're going to get started. If you do have this up, you should be able to see my screen at this point. If you have any questions that you know you're going to probably want to ask, do me a favor, bring up the question window right now and start to chat them out. I did get a few in advance, so I'll make sure I cover those, but if you have one that you know of right now, do me a favor, just go ahead and ask it, and that way we can make sure we can cover it. And again, we'll get started in just a few minutes. We're going to get started in just in a minute. For those who have joined us, you should be seeing my screen at this point. If you are not, please just let me know, but you should be able to see my screen. If you have a question that you know you're going to want to ask during today's training, and if you would like to go to the question window right now and type it in, that would be great. I did get some questions in advance, so I'll make sure I do cover those. Thank you for those who asked questions in advance so we can make sure we can cover those. If you, like I said, have any other questions, please make sure that you put those in the question window as soon as possible and I can make sure to cover those. We'll get started in just a minute. I'm just waiting for about 2 or 3 more to join us real quick with their sound. I see they've joined us but haven't quite called in or you selected the microphone and speaker just yet. Just going to give everybody another minute or two and then we're going to get started. If you do have any questions that you didn't pre-submit that you would like to enter in, do me a favor, go to the question window right now and try to enter them in. That way I can have some idea of how many questions we need to make sure we can cover for today. Okay, I think we have everybody who's going to join us today. So again, you guys probably know me. My name is Eva. I'm from ParishSOFT. If you have any questions throughout today, feel free to bring up the chat window or the question window and type in your questions. So I'll make sure I answer them today. Today is just kind of a question and answer time. Anything you would like to ask me, feel free to do so. There were some pre-submitted questions, and I'm going to make sure I start with those and cover those. But if I go through a section, if you have any questions, again, feel free to ask at any point. Now, there was just one question I will get to at some point where I'm actually going to direct it to Chad because that was something, unfortunately, I do not know the answer to, but I know Chad at the diocese will. It's specific for your diocese. So make sure that we do cover those type of questions as well. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing I'm going to kind of talk about is some things in family directory that people asked. So the kind of the first question that I got from someone that I want to make sure we cover, especially this time you guys are going through like a recensus or figuring out which families are actually a part of your church and which ones are not. And basically the question is, should you delete them from the program? And no, don't delete them. What you're going to want to do is mark them as unregistered. So it's as simple as bringing up the family record. As soon as you bring up the family record, you should be able to course edit the details and uncheck that registration status. Once you've gone ahead and unchecked it, it does ask you, do you want to change all the family and member statuses to inactive? But most of the time you typically do. If you want then the family group to be different than inactive, at that point you can feel free to do so. You can just use the drop-down menu and select a different one. But it will still leave the member records as inactive. So once you do that and you hit save and close, it should update the record. By the way, you may want to do a few other things and I'll point those out in a second. But that way, when you go and you're looking at your list and you want to go do a mailing, if you just select your registered and active families, you're not going to get that family. So it just makes it a little bit easier when working with the records, but you do want to at least keep them in. So make sure you don't delete those. Now, the next question related to, oh, before I do so, let me just make sure that I point out something else that you might want to do. Hold on, let me change the family group to be all groups, and then I should get the family just unregistered. When you do mark a family as unregistered, one of the little tidbits I always give people is make sure you uncheck that send mail. That way you don't accidentally send them in anything. And also I would uncheck the send envelope just because most of the time they may not need that. So if that happens, make sure you do that. Bonnie, there is a question you asked, and I will make sure that I respond to you, and because that's specific for your church. So I'll make sure I talk about that with you. I'll either chat you the answer or send you an email later. So I'll make sure you get that all sorted out. Okay, so the next question we're going to make sure I talk about is actually the question for Chad. It's the it's a question for the diocese. So Chad, hopefully I'm going to ask it first, and then Chad, I'll unmute you so it gives you a minute to kind of come back. So one of the questions that I got from someone was, we have people who are listed in our system twice, and it was due to the diocese putting in some duplicate records. The question is, can I delete those duplicate families? I'm going to say no, but I'm going to, like I said, open it up to Chad and let him answer that for you.
Eva is correct. We don't want anybody being duplicated. What I ask you to do is, if you know of a family that has a duplicate record, just send me an email with the family name, and then I need the 2 DUID numbers, and I need you to specify the DUID number of the master file that you want to keep and the DUID number of the duplicate file, and I'll do the process to merge those. So no information will be lost, but instead of 2 records moving forward, you will have 1 record. And I believe now, I'm going to throw this back to Eva, that the people can see that I have done a merge in the notification process. Is that correct?
Correct, yes. Now in the newest version, once Chad does merge a record for you guys, then when you, whoever's your administrator, when they go to the administration section, will get a notification. And let me see if I actually have one of those notifications so I can show you guys what it looks like. I have notifications, but I don't know if I have any duplicate ones. Unfortunately, I don't have anything that would be duplicate, but it would basically look like this first line where it would say Diocese of, and it would say Wheeling Charleston, of course. And then it will say the subject would be merged duplicate or duplicate merged. I forget what it actually says. And then it will give you the information about that he merged it, what records were kept, what things were changed. So we'll make sure that that's all set. Also, when families are merged, I don't know if I have any merged so unfortunately I might not have it. But next to the registration date, there will say merge date, and then it will give you the date that that family was merged, also in the family details. So if you're not an administrator, you'll know that that family was merged because it will give you that information next to the registration date as well.
And just kind of a follow-up to that, anybody that was dealt with in the safe environment bringing in of data, their record was put into the parish with a, I'm trying to pull up one here real quickly, with a family status of being unregistered at the parish, because again, that would be a duplicate record, and we don't want them being counted twice in the registration status, but also they're identifiable by having the SEP TBD status. So you can very easily filter out any of those people that you don't want to see. But again, if you find that there are duplicate records, please let me know, and I will be happy to merge them. It may just take me a little bit of time to do it.
Thanks, Chad. And Chad, I just have one more kind of additional question on that because it's something that relates to it. If a family they've had at the parish, someone has put in the family like 3 times, and all 3 family records have contributions, are you willing to merge those so that way they have one family record with all the contributions?
Absolutely. I'm happy to do any mergers. I try to do them whenever I have a few moments to try to catch up, but yep, I'm happy to do that.
Great. So hopefully that answers the 2 people's questions about duplicate records. If it doesn't, please let us know. So one of the questions was, is there a way to filter out the SAP records when you're doing posting contributions? Actually, there is, and we will get to that setting once I get to offering, and I'm actually about to get there. So if you don't mind holding on to that question, the person who asked that, I will get to that in a second. Is there any other questions about Family Directory, though, before we move on to offering? Because there was a lot about offering. Okay, so let's move on to offering. So there was several questions about offering. Some of the questions were very similar, so I'm going to kind of combine a bunch of them together. So hopefully I eventually hit your questions for all those who ask questions about offering. So let me go through a couple of things. First of all, there are some questions about the quick entry and batches and all that. So I want to just kind of go through that process again. So under offering, when you go and create a batch, just like you normally would with detail, you will enter in, of course, the last weekend's information. So like, for example, I'm going to put in this past weekend's date as it, and oh, what did I do? I put in slashes. So let me make sure I put those as dashes so I don't get an error. Sorry. And then, of course, you put in the cash total, and then you select what fund, and then you need to select the batch type of quick entry. When you select the quick entry option, then when you click on add batch, just like detail, you have the 3 batch options, but make sure you don't hit that close batch because that is going to be a huge problem. But let's start by hitting just close. Then when you go under offering, under posting, we can click on quick entry posting. When I click on quick entry posting, it's going to show me any batch that's selected as that batch type. When I see that, I can easily select the batch I want to work with and launch the screen. Now, when I launch the screen, it's very similar to the detail where, of course, you need to make sure you select the correct batch, but as long as you've done it in the previous screen, you should be all set. But you can change it while working on batches as well. Then you need to select what fund that most of the contributions are going to go to. Again, just like detail, this can change throughout the posting, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Then you need to select the correct date and select the payment type. Then, similar to the detail, there's going to be the options and filters. And in the options and filters, you can change how do you want to put in the contributions, what additional information you want to add in, and then you can do the posting filters, which is going to be which registration status and family group. So this is where if you want to filter out the SEP records, one of the things you can do is just select the family status of registered and leave the family group to be all groups. And then when you click on save, it's only going to bring up those registered families. So any family records that were brought in as an SEP record, again, Chad said they're marked as unregistered, so they're not going to show up while I'm posting. So that's one of the things you can do. Now, once I've got that, then I can start by entering in some contributions. And it's as simple as just typing in the envelope numbers and then typing in the amounts. And then as soon as I hit enter, it's all set. Now, as soon as I keep on going, I can easily, oops, sorry, I'm about to post to a non-correct envelope number. Let's try that again. Okay, once I've gone ahead and entered in a few contributions, if then from this contribution going forward is going to have a different fund, like you're going to do a second collection, then you can easily change what fund you're working with. And anything going forward is going to have that fund. So I can easily then type in the next envelope number, type in the amount, and it's now going to go to the building fund campaign. Now, this is one thing though you need to kind of know about your funds. If you're doing pledge records, if they are connected to a required pledge fund, if the family doesn't have a pledge record, it's still going to bring up their name, but it's going to be in red, which means that they don't actually have a pledge for that fund. So just know if things are red but their name's there, it has to do something with pledges. So if you have something like that, just kind of note that. I'm going to change this to be something else so that way then it's not red. Now, if you do have pledges and you're posting contributions using this option, then when you've gone ahead and type in their amount, you'll notice there is a little leaf next to their name. That little leaf is going to indicate that it is connected to a pledge record. So that will show you that. Now, once you've gone ahead and put in a few contributions, then from there, it does allow you to go ahead and once you balance out, commit the batch. So let me quickly just finish off this batch real quick. And we'll do, oh, let's do, sorry, 1 second. I'm trying to do this calculation in my head. Let's do that. Okay, $80. Sorry, just hold on 1 second and then I'll have, oh, I wanted $80 here. There we go. So once I've finished a batch, it's all set. It is going to give me the option to commit a batch right then and there. Now what that means is actually going to put those contributions to the records. Because right now, if we go and look, for example, at the Adams family, that contribution is going to show up on their record because it's not actually saved to their record just yet. That's what committing the batch will do. So right now I can easily hit close, run a report, kind of just make sure everything looks all right. I can say, oh, yep, here's my families, here's the amounts, here's the funds that it's going to go to. And as you can see, anything after that specific contribution did go to the other fund. So changing the fund at the top quickly does that. So if you do have like a second collection, it makes it easy. But say I wanted to go to giving history. Oh, sorry. I forgot. I'm in an area that I cannot do giving history at this moment. Unfortunately, it's a issue with my training site for today. But if I looked at their giving history, I would not see that contribution there. So what I need to do is go back in and I need to commit the batch. Once I'm hit that option, it's going to ask me, am I sure? I'm just going to say, yes, I want to commit the batch. Now, once I commit the batch, then those contributions are going to show on the family records, okay? But with this, I still need to close the batch. And of course, we recommend to close the batch as soon as you put in the contributions and you make sure everything's all set. Don't wait until the end of the year because then you're going to have tons and tons of batches that you're going to need to close at some point. You want to close them right away. No, you don't absolutely have to do it right away. That's perfectly fine. You could wait a day or two, but after about 2 or 3 days, my recommendation is go in and close the batch. Even if you're not sure, go and close it, and we can always fix contributions later on, okay? But at this point, if it was the next day, I could go into my contribution list and see my contributions, and I can fix one if I needed to. Now, then from there, I would recommend to close a batch. So now I'm going to go ahead and close my batch. Now, when you commit a batch, it does change the status when you go to the batch management. Just make sure you change the status to be committed, and then you should be able to close the batch. And again, just close it as soon as possible. Once we close the batch, then I'll show you how to fix a contribution in a closed batch in just 1 second. There's just a few questions that came in, so let me read those real quick before I move on. Okay, one simple question real quick was, once you commit a quick entry batch, you can still go and edit it through the contribution list and from the detail posting. Is that correct? Yes. Either from the detail, if you need to add in more contributions, that's perfectly fine. You can easily do so just like you normally would. You can also go to the contribution list and you can easily go ahead and select those and edit those at the exact same time. That's perfectly fine. Now the other question that was asked that's a little more complicated is, say you do have a quick entry posting batch that you're working with and you try to bring up a family that is marked as unregistered. So for example, I think, sorry, I don't remember one of my envelope numbers that's unregistered, but let me see if this one is marked as unregistered. Nope, that's marked as registered. If you come across one that's not marked as registered and you try to bring it up, then let me try doing this. I'm going to change it to both because I know their last name. So let me just go ahead and type in the last name. So say my loose cash family, it's marked as unregistered, right? When I go to try to select it and enter in the amount, it's going to still allow me to see that information. So you can bring it up, it's not super challenging to bring it up if it doesn't. It just allows you to limit if you wanted to. So just changing the options and filters should allow you to kind of fix that problem. So if you go through and it marks the person as read, so for example, I try to bring up this envelope number, say it was an actual envelope number, and it's giving me something like it's red, it just means that it actually doesn't meet the qualifications of my posting filters. So I can always go back in and change those. That's perfectly fine. So I can always go back and change this to be anything I want, and then that way I can work with them. So that kind of helps you. So hopefully that answers that person's question. Okay, so the next question I'm going to answer is, how do you fix the contribution in a closed batch? I think I had like 3 or 4 people ask me this question. So let's go over it. So the first thing that you're going to want to do is know what contribution it is. What fund did it go to? What date? What family? How much was it? Okay, that's going to be a huge key factor of what you're going to do next. So I always kind of go to the batch that it was in and I look at the batch and I look at the contributions. Okay, so I know what date the batch was originally. I can do a quick report in the batch detail screen and I can see the contribution and I can verify the information before I do anything else. And then typically what I would do is either print off the report, and especially the page that contribution's on, or I would just write down the information, okay? Whatever works best for you. So we're going to use the McCoy's, Armstrong and McFerry as our example. So their envelope number is 5004, right? So I'm going to take their amount of $80 and I'm going to cancel it out. So to do so, the first thing I do is I need to create a batch to put that contribution in. So I'm going to click on Add Batch. When I click on Add Batch, the first thing I would do is name it the exact same as the original batch, so I remember that information. So for example, I put in, like I said, this past weekend. So I'm going to type in the correct date, hopefully. And then I'm going to add the word correction at the end. So I'm going to do 1/29/2017 correction. That way I know it's going to fix some contribution in that record. Then once I do that, I select the fund as is. Now, depending on what you're doing, you may not have a total, so the total may actually end up being 0, or it might be a negative amount. And I will show you what those mean in just a minute. Now for batch type, do me a favor, select the batch type to detail. okay, because it makes your process actually a little bit faster than using quick entry. Quick entry, it ends up being more steps for correction. So do me a favor, select detail. Now, once I do the batch for the correction, then I can go to detail posting and select the information. So of course you guys know the screen. I select the batch, I select the fund, I select the family group, family status. I choose how do I want to input by. I'm going to choose envelope number for today. And then I need to make sure the posting date is the date of the original contribution. Okay, it has to be the date of the original contribution. So I'm going to make sure it does say 1/29/2017. Once I do that, then I can go to the envelope number field and type in their amount, envelope number. And then when I get to the amount field, I'm actually going to type in a negative amount of their original. So for example, the original was $80. So I'm going to type in a negative $80 here. When I type in a negative $80, as long as the fund, the posting date, the envelope number is all the exact same, including the amount, but it's just a negative, then when I hit enter, then it's going to go ahead and see the positive and the negative and throw both out the window when it comes to their statements. But when I'm looking at my reports, so say I go to contribution list and I do quick reports and I do view date range, I will see both of them listed. Now see, I did do one mistake though. I didn't actually select the correct fund. So now I have the positive as the holy days, but then the negative is the offertory. So it's not actually going to counteract each other. So I need to make sure those are the exact same. So before you close the batch of the correction, always do that report. Make sure that they do line up. So I'm going to redo this one. I'm going to edit that to make sure it does say Holy Day Special Collections. I'm going to say wrong fund. So then, now if I run this report, I should see the two lines together. And now I'm going to see the positive and the negative, and it's going to cancel each other out. Again, it shows on both of my reports, but as long as I know that they have the same everything, it's going to be no problem when I run the statements. Any questions about that? If you forget how to do this again, if you ever go to our website, again, if you just go to ParishSOFT.com or help.ParishSOFT.com and go to our video helps, one of the videos we do have listed is editing contributions in a closed batch, okay? And so that video will walk you through the process of going through that. Now, also, if you go to Help Guide and go to Offering Help and go to Contribution Posting, there is an option that says how to correct an incorrect posting in a closed batch. And this will also give you the written instructions. So again, don't worry about like, oh, I'm going to forget this in 2 months. I had to make sure I write everything down. We do have the video that will walk you through the steps. And if you ever go to the help guide, we do have the help instructions as well. Okay, so the next kind of set of questions I got was related to statements. So I'm going to go do that, but before I do that, I still have that open batch for the correction. And since I made sure it was all set, I'm going to go and close it real quick because once I'm done with the batch, I want to close it right away. So I'm going to go ahead and hit close. Oh, I didn't zero it out. Because notice that my balance is $80 because I didn't put in a positive. So I need to put in a negative $80 as my total. And then now my total, my cash balance would be 0. This is where your cash flow might be 0 if then you had to put in a positive, like if it was to the wrong fund, you could easily do that. Or if it was to the wrong date. I know a lot of times this time of year you forget the year was incorrect, and you could easily go ahead and just post it to the correct date, but then your balance would be 0. So, but I'll go ahead and close that batch. So now I can go to statements. So contributions, contribution statements. Now, working with the statements this year, we did a lot of changes, if you hadn't noticed, in the last couple of versions to really enhance it and make it easier for you to be able to get the statements out. So, of course, the first thing what you have to do is select which funds. So you check the box next to description if you want all of them. If you just want a specific set, of course, you just check the boxes next to the ones you specifically want, okay? Then when you hit next, it's going to go ask you what kind of detail statements or summary statements you want, whether you want paper or electronic statements. I'm going to show you electronics just to kind of give the example of what the person kind of wanted, but I'm going to use electronics for today. And then you select what date range you want. I'm going to change my status so I can do it for everyone. And then, of course, with the body of letter, if you have a letter, you can easily enter it in here. If you want to include a signature, that's perfectly fine. If you have one, you can easily grab it. I believe I have one. Just hold on one second for me. Where's desktop? Do I have it here? Nope, it's here. Signature. Here we go. Of course, you do have to name it. I normally name it Father because I know it's the father's signature. And then you can also add the printed name underneath it. So like, for example, you could easily put in Father Dan Demo after that. So that way his printed name goes below his signature name if you need to. So I'm going to go ahead and put, I'm going to just change my letter real quick to make sure I have the thank you above the signature. And then Father. And then once I hit next, then I get my list of givers. For today, I'm going to start with just one giver to kind of show you something. But once I've gone ahead and checked the box next to the family or families I want to do it for, I'm going to go ahead and click on View Statements. When I click on View Statements, it's going to go ahead and show me what their statement looks like. Now you'll notice that they have no contributions because the only contribution I had was that specific one that had a positive and a negative. I canceled out. So with this, they don't actually have anything. So again, if you have a positive and a negative, it's going to cancel it out. So I'm going to actually bring up a different set of families. I'm going to bring them all up. Once I do so, then it will show me the statements. Now our statements are designed to fit, of course, in window envelopes, and they are designed to have that no goods or services down at the bottom, so you don't have to put that in your body of message. Now, kind of one of the questions that was asked is kind of how do I customize it, but it's still coming out with things that you don't want. Now, this is where it gets a little bit challenging. You can't really customize our statements. Basically, how they come up is how they come up. The only thing you can customize is the names and the signature and that information that shows up, okay? So with this, if there's something like at the top you don't want, if it's the exact same for all your families, then you can export it as an RTF, which is to Word, and you can do a find and replace, okay? But if it's not the exact same on every single one, then unfortunately you're going to have to go in and modify each one individually. There's not a way to kind of customize like removing like the ID number here. Since the ID number is going to be unique for each family, you could remove where it says ID, but then you have to go in to each statement and remove their actual number. So just note that's true. Now, there was a good comment that Chad made in the question window. I just want to make sure that is also very clear related to statements. Now, once a contributions have been entered in, if you're using quick entry, as long as the contributions have been committed but not closed, they do show up in the statements, but we do recommend to close them, the batches though. So for example, I'm going to go ahead and kind of clear out some of these real quick. So I balance out. So for example, I'm going to eventually bring up the Davis family, Dale. So you'll notice right now, his contribution is for $100. If I actually go and look at the reports right now for statements, I'm going to bring this up real quick. Not going to care. You'll notice that he's not actually in my list because he has no contributions because it's not been committed yet. But if I go and I go ahead and commit this batch, nope, I have one that's incorrect. Let me fix that. There we go. Okay, so once I've committed the batch, I haven't closed it. So if I go to the contribution list, you'll see I'll still be able to edit those contributions, but I can't close, I haven't closed it yet. So now if I go to reports and go to contributions and go to statements, and I select my funds, I'm just going to hit next, next. You'll notice that Dale Davis does show up. So again, as long as the contributions have been committed, you should be able to run statements, but we do recommend to close the batch as soon as possible. So I'm glad, Chad, I'm glad you pointed out that comment. Now that was all the specific things. I believe I hit them all that people asked for in advance. So is there any other questions I haven't hit just yet? Or if there's other questions you've thought of, I'm going to give everybody a minute, kind of put it into the question window and we can answer them. So I was asked a good question. So when you bring up statements, if, oops, sorry, I need to select a giver. That might be helpful, right? So when you bring up statements, your information up here, your like church name, your church address, phone number, email address, say that's incorrect. How do you change that? It does need to be done by your administrator, so I apologize if you're not the administrator, but write down the instructions for that person. Have them click on the administration tab. Once you click on the administration tab, you're going to click on organizations. Under organizations is where we get your information. So if, for example, say my email address is wrong, then I need to come here, click on the little edit icon, and then I can easily go ahead and type in the correct email address. And then when I go to run statements, it should be all set. So again, if anything's incorrect when pulling up your statements, this is where it's going to be incorrect. Okay, I'm getting some other questions come through, so as I'm getting them, I'm going to answer them if that's okay. So if you're typing lots of questions, just be patient with me. So one of the questions is, what if I don't want to itemize each donation on a statement? You just kind of want to give a total. Well, one of the things you can do is you can select the report format to be summary. And when you select it to be summary, then when you go to run the statements, again, I'm not going to care about the message just right now. I just want to kind of show you what it would look like. Then you will go ahead and have each fund listed and then the total amount that they gave to that fund. So that's where if you don't want to itemize each individual contribution, you can select the report format of summary, and then it shows you each fund, how much they gave to that fund. Now the next question, I'm going to actually I'm going to give my opinion on this, Chad, and then I'm going to actually have you give your opinion on this one, because this one I'm not sure if you want them to do. The question is basically, where do you add your tax ID number on the template? The only way you would be able to add that is in the body of statement. You would just have to like add it in as a sentence or two or something, because there's not a way to kind of add that. But I'm not sure if you really want to put your tax ID number on the statements. Chad, what's your opinion?
I know it's not on the one coming from my parish because I did it. I can check with the finance office and see if they would see a need for it to be on there. But I think I would agree with Eva. I don't know that I would put that information out there for everybody to see. But
Yeah,
if I find out differently from the finance office, I will let you all know.
Yeah, I think Chad's right. I don't think the finance people are going to say yes, that you need to put it on there. I think the tax ID number is only for you, and I think most of the time your staff members for doing things like that. But other than that, I don't think you need that number on the contribution statements. I don't have any other questions that I think I missed. So is there any other questions? Again, we have some more time, so if you have any questions, feel free to ask them. So I was asked to quickly go over just how to add a new staff person in the program. So let me go ahead and show that. So the first thing you actually want to do is make sure that you go to the family directory and have them in your family directory. Especially If they are a member of a parish not at your parish, say they're at the one like maybe a town or two over, you still need to bring them in and bringing their whole entire family record over. So for example, I'm going to click on Add New Family, and I'm going to go ahead and search for my name, actually, because I know I am in the diocese, but not in this specific parish. So when I search for myself, I should be able to find it, and then I should be able to move my family record. And so I can bring it in as simple as unregistered. Most of the time, unless the staff person is going to be a registered parishioner, you'll just bring them in as unregistered. When you bring them in as unregistered, should bring you back to your family directory, and you should be able to go ahead and see that family record now in your family directory. So I'm just going to make sure that it did come through. Yep, we're good. It's in my family directory. So then what I can do is I can just then go to the administration tab, click on manage staff. And once I click on manage staff, I can click on the blue plus sign. And once I click on the blue plus sign, I can then search for that person's name. Now, when I search for that person's name, I should be able to go ahead and find myself. I put two member records in for myself. So once I see myself, then I can click on accept down at the bottom. Once I click on accept, then it should bring up a message letting me know it's been created. And then I can fill out the staff record. So then I can put in their username, their email address. I can select their position. To select their position, you can easily check the box next to the position they are. And then to make it not unknown as the position, you just drag and drop the position above unknown. And then you can easily uncheck unknown. And then when you go to access rights, just make sure primary assignment, grant login, and connect now access are checked. Again, that's primary assignment, grant login, and connect now access. Once you have those, then everything else is depending on what you want to give them. If they're going to be an admin for the system, make sure that on the left-hand side, the organization admin is selected. And that should allow you to go ahead and create them as a staff person. But the key factor is make sure that they're in your family directory first. If you're not in the family directory first, that's going to cause more problems later on. So make sure that you do that first, and then you should be all set.
Eva,
Yes.
one question that came up from a parish, now that we have all the SEP records showing up under managed staff, they wondered if there was a way to filter those out when they're looking at their staff listing, so that they only see their actual, let's say, paid staff or volunteer staff and not all of the records. What's your recommendation on that?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, there's not a good way to kind of filter those out. The easiest way I've found to kind of filter my list to not show those is actually to sort by my primary position. Because when I sort by primary position, then you can easily go ahead and find the one person you're looking for. Or if you know what that person's position is, you can use the position drop-down menu and you can actually filter for a specific position. And so it's one of those where I just type into that field, by the way, because it's a drop-down field. And then I can select the position I want to work with, and then I can bring that position up. So things like that is one of the things I would probably recommend to do to make it easier on yourself. But once you do that, then it should make it easier to find the list of people you're looking for. So
That's exactly what I was going to recommend, and because all of ours are SEP, TBD, it puts them towards the end of the list when you search by primary position. And most of our places, you know, are probably going to be under 100 people. They could also change the number of records if they wanted to see everybody all on one screen. But that's the same logic that I had thought, was to search by or sort by primary position.
Yeah, if you sort by primary position, especially since the SCP records start with an S, they're going to be more towards the bottom, so it's going to make it easier to see your list at the top. So,
Yep.
so I got a couple other questions, so I'm going to make sure I go and answer them. So one of the questions was, what if our body of statement is kind of short and simple? Do you recommend any other details that we should add in? Basically, if your template, if you really don't have a long body of message, like mine's only 2 sentences, um, one of the things that I found to be really great in just kind of knowing as like a parishioner myself, when you send out the body statements, if you want to add just a little bit longer, it's only 2 sentences, you want to make it maybe like a paragraph or something. Uh, State what you're going to do next year. Do you guys have anything coming up? Like, do you have a festival coming up? Or do you have any kind of big dinner celebrations, something like that you can add in? Or maybe even just kind of explaining, for our budget this year, here's some things that we've thought about doing to make sure our budget is intact and, we're going to stay under budget. So one of the things I can be uh, to help or kind of add more details is honestly be honest with your members. Tell them what you're going to do with the money. If you can tell them what you're going to do with the money, then honestly they're going to be great to probably give you more. If they know it's going towards good things, that's going to bring them together or something, might be more willing to. So that's my recommendation. Okay, so there was another question that kind of was asked that I'm going to summarize this question because I think I know what the person is getting to, so I want to make sure that I kind of hopefully get their question, but summarize it. So say you have a batch, like for example, my close batch of one of these, I think it is this one. I have 2 different funds going towards this batch. So say you have a batch that has like 4 or 5 funds and all the contributions have the wrong date. One of the things that I've kind of recommended, it does take a little bit of time, but depending on how many contributions are in the batch, this actually might be a lot faster for you. If you have a whole batch that's incorrect, one of the things I would do is export it as a CSV file. Once you export it as a CSV file, it should kind of look like this. You could do it from the contribution list area as well. But basically, I would delete kind of out the extra information. And, so like for the first couple of rows, we don't need all that information. I just basically need the date, the amount, the contribution type if it's going to be different for each one, the family's envelope number in the fund, right? Once you kind of have that information, and then what you can do is if you go to the help and then the offering help, if you go to importing contributions and pledges, there's an option that says importing from non-ParishSOFT systems. If you read these instructions, it shows you how to import a file. You have to have it in a certain way and have certain columns in certain areas, like the envelope number column. I can select it and cut it out, and then I can paste it into B column, and then do the same idea for each of the columns, make sure it's in the correct order. But then that way you can just import the batch back in. And so you can just go in, and what I've done is when you export the file, notice how it has on the amount a $sign, right? Well, what you can do is I do a simple find and replace. I say find me a $sign, and I say replace it with a -sign. And I just say replace all. So once, I can't seem to have it find it. I don't know why. But Normally I don't have a problem. Maybe just the computer I'm on. I know I've been having issues with this new computer I'm using, so I apologize. But you can do a find and replace, and you can do that so that way then the dollar sign is actually negative, and so all the amounts are a negative amount. And then that way you can just re-import it in. It then has the correct information, and you can do the similar idea if you need to repost them. You could repost them if it just went to the wrong date. You can keep the positives and change the date and repost it to a positive one. So if you have lots of contributions, that's kind of one of my ways to do it. So that's kind of one of the things I found to be kind of helpful. So if you, oh, sorry, the sound on my computer is very loud, so it's making a lot of noise. So if you have that situation, one of the things I do recommend is kind of take the original batch, export it, re-import it, and it might help to get that all sorted out. So hopefully that kind of helps with that situation. Was there any other questions? We're almost out of time, but I just want to make sure that we do cover any other questions.
I just want to thank all of you for being part of this today, and thank Eva for moderating the online training. Again, if you need help on specific things related to ParishSOFT, feel free to contact support via an email if it's not something urgent, and usually they respond back with very detailed step-by-step instructions, or via phone if it's something more timely. Don't be afraid about calling and asking for help. If it's something more related to the diocese, you're welcome to contact me. But if it's something I think ParishSOFT can better help you with, I'm going to direct you back to them.
And don't forget, Chad did say at the beginning, I want to make sure I repeat it because there was multiple people asked me this question. If you have any duplicates, make sure you send them to Chad with the family DUID number. It is right there on the family directory screen. Make sure you send him that family DUID number so that way he can merge those records together. It's also, by the way, as soon as you bring up a family record at the top of the screen, it does give you the DUID number in parentheses. So make sure you send those to Chad.
With the specification as to which is the master record and which is to be the duplicate record.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, well, I'm going to end this if no one else has any questions. Chad, I do have one thing for you after this session, if you don't mind. I'm going to call you real quick. But I hope everybody else has a pleasant rest of the day. If you have any other questions, again, feel free to contact our support team, and they can answer any questions you might have. I did record this, and so I'll be emailing this out to everybody. So if you did have someone who wanted to see this and wasn't able to join, you will get a copy of it. So Chad, you'll also get a copy of this as well.
Great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Hope everybody has a great rest of the day.
Thanks. Bye-bye.